Dive into the abyss of the unknown, where every turn holds a spine-chilling surprise. Welcome to Scarier Things, where we unravel tales that will make your blood run cold. Today, we bring you 4 bone-chilling stories that will take you on a roller coaster ride of fear and suspense. From a honeymoon that turns into a horrifying ordeal in the paradise of Hawaii, to a family road trip that takes a terrifying detour in the dead of night. We'll navigate through a sightseeing adventure that uncovers a gruesome discovery. And finally, we'll step aboard a cruise ship where a summer vacation spirals into a nightmarish encounter. So buckle up as we journey through these tales of terror that remind us of the unpredictability of life and the resilience of the human spirit when faced with danger. Let the chills begin. Story 1. My wife and I were enjoying our honeymoon in Hawaii, on the picturesque beach of Oahu. During our time there, my wife left to use the restroom. Upon her return, she informed me of a disturbing encounter with a man who had been watching her and had blocked her path as she tried to exit the restroom. She managed to escape when 2 other individuals entered, causing the man to move aside. I asked her to describe the man, but he had disappeared from sight. Our hotel was conveniently located within walking distance from the beach, so we quickly returned, ensuring to report the incident to a police officer we encountered along the way. After freshening up, we dined at an upscale seafood restaurant and took a leisurely stroll before returning to our room close to midnight. As we were settling in for the night, there was a knock at the door. Peering through the peephole, I saw a man in a maid's uniform. Upon opening the door, he attempted to force his way in, claiming he had left something in the room while cleaning earlier. Despite having left the "Do Not Disturb" sign on the door all day, I noticed him making eye contact with my wife. Suddenly, my wife screamed, "That's the man." Before I could fully comprehend her words, the man lunged at me, clutching my throat with one hand while brandishing a knife with the other. If not for my wife's quick thinking, striking him in the face with a lamp, I might not have survived. The ensuing commotion alerted the occupants of the neighboring rooms, adding to the chaos. We immediately contacted the police, as did the hotel, resulting in a significant scene. Despite the ordeal, we were grateful to be alive. Upon the arrival of the police, we were questioned, and several witnesses corroborated our account. We remain uncertain of the man's intentions, but it seems likely he was targeting my wife. His audacious attempt to commit such a crime in a public building speaks to his lack of judgment. Story 2. My wife, our 2 children, and I were on a road trip from New York to Florida, heading to Disney. We were nearing Florida, driving through Georgia around 11 p.m. I had planned to complete the journey that night to save on hotel costs. My wife and kids were sound asleep, and I was driving as smoothly as possible on the quiet highway. There were hardly any other vehicles around. Suddenly, I noticed 2 flashing red lights in the distance, resembling SOS signals rather than police lights. As I approached cautiously, I saw a car parked in the middle of the road, seemingly positioned to block traffic, with 2 cones on either side and 2 SOS lights flashing on the ground. 2 hooded men emerged from behind the car and started approaching us. I quickly put the car in reverse, ready to retreat. One of the men came to my window, and I cracked it open just enough to hear him. He asked me to open the door. I immediately shut the window as he began to reach into his pocket. I put the car in drive and sped off, driving over the cone and SOS light, and grazing their car. A minute later, I noticed a pair of headlights rapidly approaching from behind. My wife woke up, confused and alarmed by our speed. I told her to stay quiet and explained that we were being followed. The car behind us started flashing its lights, and then there was a loud pop. I felt the car losing control but managed to keep it steady. However, a second loud pop caused the car to drag. I urged my wife to call 911, even though it seemed too late. By now, our kids were awake and scared. I kept the car moving as long as I could, but the car behind us started ramming our trunk. Amidst the crying of our kids and my wife's frantic conversation with the police, I was certain we were doomed. Then, miraculously, I heard a siren and saw red and blue flashing lights approaching from behind. Our pursuers veered off onto an exit we were passing, and the police car followed them. I pulled over to the side of the road, took the phone from my wife, and relayed everything to the police. Upon inspection, I found that our two back tires had been blown, likely shotted, which I also reported to the police. 10 minutes later, a police squad car and a AAA truck pulled up behind us. They seemed eager to inform us that they had apprehended the two men. Apparently, someone else had encountered their roadblock but had managed to escape and alert the police. Story 3. In her 20s, my sister and her now husband vacationed in Street Martin. They'd rented a car for sightseeing, and one day, they found themselves on a secluded side road, devoid of any signs of civilization. It was a scenic route, but according to my sister, it was a rather deserted road that likely didn't lead anywhere significant. Their journey took an unexpected turn when they spotted the rear of a car protruding from the crops by the roadside. As they approached, they noticed it was an unbranded, rusty, neon blue car that seemed to have swerved off into the crops. My sister's husband stopped their car and instructed my sister to stay put while he investigated. From what my sister shared, her husband peered through the car windows but found no one. Suddenly, he recoiled at something beneath the car. Intrigued, my sister exited their car to see what had startled him. They both crouched down to look under the rusty vehicle and were met with a horrifying sight. Two men, armed with large knives, were lying beneath the car alongside a bloody corpse. Reacting swiftly, my sister's husband pushed her back towards their car and hurriedly ushered her into her seat. The two men had crawled out from under the car and were now standing. He managed to get back into their car just in time to speed off down the road. They stopped at the first sign of civilization, ensuring they weren't being followed, and contacted the police. The incident left a lasting impact on them, and they become uneasy whenever it's brought up. We try not to remind them of it, but I've noticed a change in my sister ever since that harrowing experience. Story 4. At the age of 16, I embarked on a summer adventure. Our grandparents had generously arranged for our entire family to go on a Royal Caribbean cruise to Florida and the Bahamas. The family included me, my two brothers, my sister and her boyfriend, my parents, my aunt and uncle, my two cousins, and my grandparents. I spent most of my time with my older brother, Rob, who was 20 at the time. We shared a room, which was technically against the rules, but we managed to convince the staff that our father was staying with us. One night, Rob and I found ourselves in the ship's nightclub. I managed to sneak in using someone else's ship ID card. Inside, I noticed an older man who gave off a creepy vibe, sitting by the wall and seemingly staring at me. To confirm my suspicion, I moved around the club, and his gaze followed me. Feeling uncomfortable, I decided to leave immediately. Coincidentally, I found my sister and her boyfriend at the bar outside the club. I joined them, trying to shake off my unease. However, a few moments later, I spotted the same man from the club. He was now sitting across the room at the bar, still staring at me. I pretended not to notice, but my heart was pounding. I considered telling my sister, but ultimately decided against it. Leaving the bar, I hurried back to my room, constantly checking over my shoulder. I reached my room safely, but was still deeply unsettled. I had a strong feeling that this man was a pervert. Later, there was a knock at the door. I peered through the peephole and saw Rob, so I let him in. I didn't see the strange man again until late the next night. Rob and I had joined my sister and her boyfriend at one of the onboard restaurants around 1 a.m. They weren't planning on sleeping anytime soon, so I decided to head back to our room. When I arrived, I noticed that the door was slightly ajar and the light was on. I was certain we had shut the door when we left, and it was too late for room service. I cautiously pushed the door open. The room was empty, and everything was in its place. I assumed that Rob must have returned to the room at some point and forgotten to shut the door. So, I went to sleep. I woke up to the sensation of a hand brushing against my cheek. I pushed it away, thinking it was Rob, but then I realized that Rob was in his bed. I screamed as I saw the man from the club standing next to me. Rob sprang into action, turning on the lamp and tackling the man. I joined in, and we managed to subdue him. Within a minute, there was frantic knocking at the door. It was my parents. My dad held the man down while we called the customer service center. 2 security workers arrived and took the man to the ship's jail for the remainder of the cruise. I'm not sure what happened to him afterwards, but the experience left me emotionally scared. I don't think I can ever go on another cruise again.